Hello and welcome to the long talk here on New Zealand Sports Radio. And I'm in for a treat today because I'm going to talk about one of the sports that I really enjoy that I don't normally talk about often, which is cycling. Because today I've got Scott Guyton, ex-professional cyclist and now general manager of Blackspoke Pro Cycling Academy, to join me. How are you doing, sir?
Yeah, well, good actually. Yeah, it's good to be back into normal life again, and just getting back into routine slowly. So pretty good.
Slowly but surely, having all the protocols and things in your business, which we'll get onto in a second. But so, how does a young boy in New Zealand get into, or what actually? Let's before then. What was your first sporting experience? That's why I kind of generally start these things. Or memory.
Sporting experience within cycling?
No, just generally. Your first sporting memory. Is it getting up in the middle of the night watching the All Blacks with your dad? Is it running out running out playing touch, or what was it?
Definitely be rugby and getting up during the middle of the night watching one of the World Cups when I was a young fella. Either that or the league. That was probably two sports that I followed when I was very young. Yeah, definitely.
So someone who's into his rugby sounds like a very very similar sort of sporting upbringing as a lot of kids here in New Zealand. How did you get into cycling?
My father was a cyclist that sort of inspired me. I watched it for many years, so I knew quite a lot about cycling before I even got into it. I was pretty much just waiting to get on a bike and race, and I was pretty much held back for quite a few years. And when I did get on, I really enjoyed it and sort of knew quite a bit about it already by the time I actually started racing, which I think helps a lot. Just progressed from there.
So was your dad a professional cyclist or just an amateur? Just enjoyed?
He was a national cyclist. He did quite a bit of racing, but he raced his whole life as well. So he started when he was 11 and he's still riding a bike today. So he's 73, I think. So he's still going. So it's a lot of experience there, and that was definitely that's what led me into the sport itself. And
so early on, you said you were held back. Was that because he just didn't want you to? Thought you wanted to get schooling under your belt, that kind of thing.
I think I've been at bike races since I was 5 years old. So I wasn't allowed to race since I was 11. So it was a long wait. And watching other kids race, and when I wasn't be able to, that was the rule. That I suppose a lot of kids aren't really safe on the roads these days, probably before the age of 10. So that was probably one of the limiting factors of riding a bike or a road bike.
And I get we are talking road cycling here on the whole.
Road cycling.
Sorry.
Yeah, there was a bit of BMX and things before that. So that was definitely. But speaking purely of road cycling.
Yeah. So have you tried mountain biking?
Back in the day, I had a bit of fun with that, but nothing too serious. Just national level. Yeah.
So, nothing too serious, just national level. And I just repped. That's all. Nothing too serious. But when did you start sort of racing at national level? I mean, was it straight from 11 years old? You were in the age grades at national level and doing well?
Yeah,
or did you?
Cycling back there was quite a lot smaller, and it was club level. We did Waikato championships, New Zealand championships, and pretty much a lot of opens. Handicap opens was the main form of racing back in those days, just progressed from there year by year.
And when I listen to cycling, one of the big differences between cyclists who sort of come from the States across to Europe is the wide open roads in the States, whereas in Europe it's lots of tiny twisty roads. What's the kind of style of cycling here in New Zealand? Do you get a lot of racecraft and the peloton craft here, or are the roads not conducive to that?
Yeah, New Zealand, like racing in New Zealand, and especially the bigger races, is you generally see 90% of the time a Kiwi will win racing here in New Zealand, even if there are some big talents come out. The roads here are very, very difficult. They're hard. They're slower than overseas, and generally very undulating terrain, which which it doesn't always suit the foreign guys, and especially local knowledge, I think, is a big assistance to most of the guys here who generally end up winning.
So, one of the things they talk about in the Belgian Classics, for example, is that knowing which corners you have to be, or which stage you have to be at the front, because it's going to narrow down and if you're too far back, you can never catch up again. Are you talking about that kind of local knowledge, or are you talking about, or is it about the roads?
That and like knowing your local competition, knowing not so crucial as Belgium or some of the tighter classic races, where I think it takes years to learn those roads, because there are a lot of corners and a lot of narrow, very tight roads there, and the conditions generally are very, very tough as well. But that's probably a different style again. It's just more winds and competition, and just the terrain here is very unforgiving. You can feel good earlier on, but it slowly does zap you here in New Zealand without knowing it. By the end of the race, you find a lot of the foreign guys have done probably too much work and not a lot left at the end there.
Yeah, so for a lot of people who might not know cycling, conservation of energy is a big thing during a race. So things like staying out in the wind, not being on the front too often, can actually pay a lot of dividends towards the end of a race. And so so what you're saying is knowing who you can let go off the front and who you can bring back and who you can't let go off the front is a key thing as well. As to don't chase down every attack. Know who the competition is a big thing here in New Zealand. That's interesting. So looking at on Wikipedia, which obviously is the Bible to everything and is absolutely true. Your first you went pro in sort of 97ish, is that right?
That'd be about right.
With IPSO Euroclean.
Yeah, it was a Belgium Division 2 team. There was a lot of teams back then, and there was a lot more racing as well. I found, there was very pretty much pro racing at least 3 or 4 times a week. You could race in Belgium anyway, let alone other countries over there. So it was very, very popular, and there was a lot of riders and a lot of races back then.
Okay, so I'll be honest. I thought we were going to be talking New Zealand first club. Got here. Your first major result was '98. You're winning the Tour of Southland, which is a Kiwi race. How did that move overseas to Belgium happen?
Actually, a few years earlier in the Tour of Southland, one of the Belgium national riders he come across, and we just happened to be in the peloton racing, and I think he had a pothole or a bit of wood, and kind of got a bit angry on that, and I ended up talking to him afterwards, and we just got talking from there, and he invited me over to Belgium the following season and offered me a bid, and just progressed from there. It's definitely if you can get over there at a young age with support in a country like that, it's definitely easier to kick off.
Yeah. So one of the things that cycling doesn't have the top teams don't have like academies, or there's some have a feeder team to a certain degree, but it's not like in say football where you can sign up at 16 and get looked after all the way through to your pro career. You basically have to find your own way a bit.
It's getting a little better now. I think back in the day there was definitely no support, and probably up until sort of three years ago, I think Patrick Bevan and George Bennett, riders like this, have curated a bit of a leeway or a road to Europe for a lot of the guys here, and we've got a lot of younger riders now signing up in development squads in Europe, and getting picked up in their smaller teams. Most of your World Tour teams, they have a Division 3 team or just a club team that will be looking and scouting for talent. And I know there's a handful of young Kiwis now that are already signed for those teams, and they're just trying to reserve first right for those riders in the future if they become a little stronger, and that means that these teams are actually watching Kiwis now, which is a really good thing.
But you say back in the day, you had to sort of make your own way over there. When you get over there to that team, do they provide you with? Obviously, someone gave you a bed, which was nice, but I'm guessing you're paying board. did they give you bikes, or did you have to fund your own bike and all that kind of stuff? How much support did you get in those early days?
I think it's just depending on the level of the team. A lot of guys will leave here and sign up for an small amateur club, and the deals, they do look after you to a degree. You end up with probably a billet family or someone looking after you on those sides. You may have to pay for a bike, you may not, just depending on the team. Once you sort of step into any of the pro ranks, then you either get provided a small wage, or your equipment is provided, and then as you step up those teams into Division 2, Division 1 teams, you get looked after a lot better again. So it just show your results, and generally you do get looked after a lot better.
But in those early days, you say you're racing 3 times a week, probably in criteriums and the high finishers get you prize money, and that's kind of how you feed yourself to a certain degree. Yeah,
definitely. Like prize money, especially in the amateur events, becomes quite crucial. You're over there with no job, and you do get hungry for chasing prize money, and it is a good motivator to get you to the race, get a result.
Yeah. So how long did it take you to, as you went in sort of a high performance pathway with supportive coaches, sort of national coaches, and I guess nutritionalists and all this kind of thing? How long did it take you to learn what was required as a professional, and how to look after your body, when to actually and that kind of thing?
I think that there is probably something everyone is still learning today, that is always evolving and changing. I think back in the day, it probably took me leaving New Zealand and living at home to, looking after yourself, and then getting more information fed to you over the years. It was probably 3 to 4 years before I actually really knew what I was doing as a cyclist, and having to race so much and recover and just look after your body. I think that's the biggest thing you learn with a little bit more age, because it is a tough sport, and the endurance side of it is very wearing on the body, and does catch up with you, and it does catch up with a lot of cyclists in general. It's an endurance sport, and a lot of young guys, so they just got to be managed very carefully on how much endurance they're actually doing.
I've heard some cyclists get to the level that obviously you're running on the edge the whole time, so you're susceptible to getting sick, and they'll do things like press lift buttons with their elbow automatically and things like that to stop touching things. Did you ever get to that kind of level of trying to look after your body and avoid getting ill and things?
Yeah, I think illness and anything you could do to stay healthy was the key. Once you're sick, you're good for nothing, really. You got no hope of racing well, or even getting to the races half the time. And it is a big part of professional sport in general, is maintaining health. If you can maintain health, you can generally maintain some sort of condition and form. Yeah.
So you had that Belgian team. You then joined Linda McCartney's team for a season. Famously a vegetarian team. How did you? Are you vegetarian, or was that a shock to the system?
No, that was a bit of a. We did turn vegetarian for the season. It was a bit of a shock to start with, but it's like anything. You learn how to eat properly, and you did get used to it. It was definitely an eye opener, and it was a really good, solid team. It was a UK-based team, so we did do a bit of obviously travel of Europe, and one part we actually got to meet Paul McCartney as well, which is probably a bit of a highlight for the season. He invited us to his house, and had the whole team there and played a few tunes for the boys, and it was a pretty cool experience that I'm still remember today.
Did you get to sing with him?
No. To be honest, it wasn't until the moment he actually started playing the instruments and piano and things, you actually realised who you were talking to, and he's very talented. And when he did that, it was pretty impressive.
But it seems like you spent most of your time in Dutch teams. You said ISPO Euroclean was one. Flanders Prefectis. I mean, Flanders, the name gives it kind of away. And then Wilsmanac cycling team, I'm guessing, was also a Belgian team.
No, I sort of stayed with Started with Ipso Flanders and then went on to Linda McCartney, then went on to a team called iTeam Nova, which was an Australian-based team.
Oh, okay.
It was before Wish My Life days. Then that was a team of Australians mainly, and we had ended up with half the team being Flemish, Belgium riders.
Oh, so an Australian team, but racing in Europe still.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, and it was a crowd-funded team, so it was effectively funded by the Australian public, and it went really well. But eventually, our funding, the subscriptions run out, and it finished the team. So there was a few sponsors on there that were doing a great job, but cycling's a real, I suppose, overall very expensive sport, and does take a lot of maintenance to keep going. Then after that, sort of semi-retired and went to Wish My Life was actually an Asian-based team based out of Indonesia, and I just did a couple of races for those guys in my final year just to give them a little bit of experience and help before I retired. So
things like Tour of Langkawi, that kind of thing.
Yeah, we did Tour of Langkawi, Tour of Shanghai Lake, did some decent racing, and they had a good little team, and they had some great riders, but it's probably just a lack of experience coming from Asia, especially back then. There wasn't as much racing or as many riders in Asia. But I think today is definitely a different scene. Asia is becoming a lot stronger within the cycling world.
In Tour Langkawi, you'll get the odd World Tour kind of racer in there and stuff. So yeah, it is a very good level of cycling. Out there. So I see here we've got second in the National Time Trial Championships. Obviously we won the Tour of Southern. What would you say was your highlight or your best memory from cycling? Was it actually a win or was it something else?
There's definitely a lot of memories over the years. I won the final stage of the Tour at the Sun Tour one year and took third overall. It was a nice result, especially towards the end of my career. Earlier in my career, I won my first pro race in my first season, which was pretty unusual for any neo pro. But yeah, there's been a lot of great memories, and not just based on wins. It's just experiences, and the people you meet along the way is pretty impressive. And the knowledge it gives you in life is awesome. It does teach you a lot and gives you a lot of it gives you well-rounded, and you do learn a lot from the sport, which you can take on to later on in life as well, which is quite good.
So I was talking to some beach volleyball players, and they were saying that one of their sort of stories of being in Europe was they learned that a tournament had a couple of people drop out. So they literally drove overnight from I think it was Germany down to Greece or something for a tournament. And turned up. Any kind of wild stories like that during your where sort of at the last minute you've had to drive somewhere, or you've had a breakdown, had to deal with it, or some funny media experience?
Oh, there's a lot. There's a lot to go wrong when you're on the road with 10 riders, 20 bikes and trucks and cars and weather. There's a lot of travel. You can be traveling up to 15 hours before a race and getting there, and then doing a 5-day tour, say in Poland, and then driving back the next day. We did. Yeah, driving was just part of the job. You had to learn to deal with it. And, it wasn't always the easiest as well. Sitting in there for that amount of time, everything starts to seize up, and then sometimes you were getting up the same day and actually racing. Running late for sometimes, held up in traffic and getting changed in the cars, everything on, shoes, helmets. The only thing you're waiting on is your numbers. That can happen at times. So there's definitely I could say there's been a lot of experiences with traveling and sport.
As you say, getting changing cars there. It's not all like the World Tours where they've got at least one coach with showers and massage beds in them. It's very different the next level down, isn't it? But
yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's big drop off once you're in Pro Tour. I think you do get looked after very well, and even amongst the Pro Tour teams, you'll see the level is, from the big teams, say Sky, through to the small pro tour teams. There's a massive difference in budget and support amongst the teams. It drops down into what we call the Pro Conti, which is level 2 in cycling, and then that's still a professional team, and they do get looked after very well. Some of the Pro Tour boys do get, they do get everything handed to them, and mentally that does give a big advantage to the bigger riders as well, knowing that they have that sort of edge going into the race.
It also means that there's famously the reason that Steve Jobs wore the same clothes every day was that he believes that you only have so many choices that you can make a day, decisions you can make a day. Sorry, and so he removed one decision, which is what he would wear, so that he had a spare decision later in the day. A bit like, so if you don't have to worry about, is my kit clean, is my bike ready, where do I have to go? That's choice. That's decisions you don't have to make. So when you do have to make critical decisions, you've got more in the bank to make that decision as well. That's also a theory as well as to hence why hence why they put that support around those cyclists or all athletes really.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So after cycling, you've stayed in cycling, but how did you stay? Did you? I think you mentioned you have a bike shop. Is that how? Did you immediately go into that?
Yeah, pretty much. My wife Vanessa, she was with me the whole time in Europe. She was racing for a Belgian professional team, it was Flanders Women's Pro Team. She eventually had a crash actually, and that finished her cycling season. More so, she was over it more so than injured, and she started a website back in the day, which I think was around the 2005 or 2003, and she started it. It was called Kiwi Velo. From there, that just progressed. We were an online-only company, and we then moved into servicing a few local people in Auckland. We got involved with the school cycling, and that sort of gave us the retail side of our business, and we ended up focusing more on retail over the years than we did on our online. And now we're sort of managing both within the company.
So shout out for what is your website and what's your bike shop called?
It's Kiwi Velo. It's kiwivelo.co.nz. It's just a retail store based in Takapuna, and it's been, I think we're just on 15 years now, so we've been around quite a long time.
So what drove you to set up Black Spoke Pro Cycling Academy?
Black Spoke was it's come about. A lot of passion has driven the project, and a few friends come to me a bit earlier last year and said, hey, we might have an opportunity in starting a pro team. Is this something you want to be involved in? And it's just progressed from there. A man by the name of Tim Henshaw, who's a businessman in town, and he's quite successful, has come to me with one of his associates, and the owner of the team is now Murray Bolton. He's retired, successful businessman here in Auckland, and he just wanted to throw a little bit back into not so much just cycling, but into any youth and sport, and he's got a real passion for cycling and obviously other sports as well. So so it's just really progressed from there. It was a project that had to a little bit be, I suppose, rushed in a way. We had to get the team off the ground in a matter of months, and so we've just started what we call a continental team, which is in the cycling world, there's Pro Tour, Pro Conti, and then Continental. So we're racing that third level, and the purpose and the focus of the team is to focus on helping a lot of our younger athletes try to make it to the next step of cycling. We found that there was a bit of a hole in that market. The whole under, once you leave school right through those under 23 years, there wasn't a lot of support for Kiwis. So we have really focused to try and get a few more of those riders through to international racing.
So in Europe, there is an under 23 scene. Is there an under 23 scene here in New Zealand as well, or is it straight into sort of the adult?
Yeah, once you're out of junior or under 19, you do step into under 23, which is a category, but that category is mixed in with elite men. So yeah, there's no hiding. You're in there. You do get results within your category, but you are competing with the elites. I think it was 2 years ago, Nationals, James Fouché, he won the under 23 title, but he also took out the elite men title as well by winning the race. So yeah, you definitely got some great young talent there.
Yeah, but yeah, sorry, yeah. In Europe, they have specific. I mean, I'm gone blank as to what the name races are. Big races.
Yeah, I apologise. Yeah, the at the World Champs there is a separate category for under 23. But yeah, once they're in most of those races, they are racing together as well. So yeah, Tour de France, you'll see. There's under 23s are winning the world at the moment, winning the Tour de France as well, which is.
Oh, but they've deliberately stepped up to the to the pro ranks, but there are under 23 races as well.
Correct.
In New Zealand here, I guess it's a smaller market. There's fewer people, fewer races, so hence all of the under 23 races are mixed up with the elite men as well.
Yeah, so yeah, mixed up. We're mixed here in New Zealand. There are a few separate races in Europe that just have under 23 category.
Like the baby Duro and things like that.
Correct.
So looking at your squad, as you say, you've got Aaron Guyton there, who's 29, to add a bit of experience, a bit of leadership, but most of the riders in the kind of the 18 to sort of 23 age range. So it's very much looking at helping them as a stepping stone to a pro Conti team, or are you looking at maybe growing this into a pro Conti team at some point?
At the moment, we're still focused on developing riders. We thought by having a few so-called older boys in the team, there's some great experience to hand down to our younger guys. So, the likes of Aaron Gates and James Oram, they've been a great sort of role model for a few of these sort of 18, 19-year-olds that have come into the team. And yeah, the future is, who knows? We've obviously got big ideas and big plans, but at the moment, the main role and the big objective still is to support Kiwis to try and give them a bit of a pathway through to the pro peloton in Europe and keep them with them.
So does that mean you'll be racing here and then sending them over there, or actually taking this team to race in Europe as well?
Yeah, we were planning on being in Europe right at the stage. Actually, this was pretty much the second half of the season. We were going to set up and run a small program in Europe with the team. Obviously, plans have changed a little bit at the moment with COVID and no travel, but I'd say the plan is just going to continue. Once things get back to normal, we'll be focused on getting back to that plan for next season.
Okay, so you race over here during the sort of our summer, and then move up during kind of March, Aprilish up into Europe, and then to do the season up there as well. Is kind of the idea?
Yeah. Once the weather sort of gets better and sort of April, but we were going to go a bit later than that because we did a couple of races in Asia before we. The first part of the season we did New Zealand and Asia, and then the second part of this season was going to be in Europe. We'll see how we go for next year, but just sort of things are a little bit up in the air at the moment, just as far as when we can't travel or when we can actually get back and traveling. But that's just, I think that's just how it is, and we're not the only team affected or only person affected through this.
So, have you had the boys on Zwift doing Zwift races, or have you kind of let them be a bit more relaxed with them?
They're all on there. They are loving the trainer, but in saying that, the weather's been so good. I know it's raining today, but the weather's been amazing here in New Zealand, and that's allowed them to carry on training outdoors. And but yeah, I dare say as it goes on, we're going to be spending a lot more time on these trainers just to miss a bit of the New Zealand winter. That's for sure.
So have you been actually, because a lot of the motor racing guys have actually competing in proper esports motor racing. Have you been trying to race as a team on Zwift in sort of e-races or in online races, or have you just or have you sort of not been racing at all during this lockdown?
No, the boys get on there. There are races on Zwift. Nothing formalised as a team. There are a few Zwift tours and things coming up. So we'll be looking into doing those if we can't get back to real racing. I know, racing on the road and racing in a peloton and corners and everything versus sitting on a trainer and effectively in your bedroom smashing yourself is definitely not what the guys want to be doing, but they will do it to buy some time and keep the fitness up in the meantime. But, it's something that we'll probably be focusing on a lot more now the weather is closing in on us a bit.
I've heard some. So I listened to a podcast or a cycling podcast, and they had, I think it was Mitch Docker on there, and he was saying how basically he's been buying pretty much industrial fans, because one of the differences between cycling outdoors and cycling on a trainer is body heat. I've heard him say, yeah. So will you be fitting out all your cyclists with sort of a bank of fans to keep them all cool while they're actually
racing? It does. It actually is more important than it sounds. It's you can get very, very hot on these machines with no wind around you and no outdoors, I suppose. So yeah, you got to keep that fan on you the whole time. It's something that makes it a lot less stress on your body, I suppose, during the sort of harder periods at least. Anyway.
And Matt Heyman, I think it was famously sort of had an injury, trained indoors on these things, and then went on to win the Paris-Roubaix, I think it was, wasn't it? Before that, after a couple of weeks just being on the road. Do you see that some of these cyclists are actually going to, some of them might actually come out of this with sort of being better perform, better, or come out better ready to race, rather than others who perhaps don't have the discipline might come out a bit overweight?
Yeah, hopefully not overweight, but it's a hard one. Like a lot of riders, it depends. A lot of we've got riders that have been racing really, really hard, and maybe this break will actually help them and give them a bit of a break, and they can get into some real structured training, and then it might actually help them coming out. And other guys may not have had enough racing going into this and been a bit underdone, and this probably wouldn't help them at all. So just really depends on the individual where they're at.
What are we seeing on the New Zealand scene? I mean, obviously, we're expecting an announcement. For those who don't know, this is on the 25th of May. So we're expecting an announcement today from the government about the numbers. Obviously, at the moment, we're only allowed 10 people together. But what if obviously without the travel arrangements, and obviously with all the races not available for people to go overseas to go and race, is New Zealand Cycling looking at putting together a bunch of extra races here in New Zealand for once the numbers go up, or what's happening in the scene? Yeah,
I think that is on the cards, and I suppose it is quite I suppose to put racing on in a short period of time is probably the difficult one. The team ourselves is actually offering to assist into a race calendar for local guys and local athletes that are stuck here, but it does take a large amount of work, and it is through a winter period as well. So just depending on the restrictions and what the government lets us do, we may be able to put racing on. It might be the crowds that would be more the issue rather than the actual group of cyclists that come together. So it just really depends. Really, I think that's the big unknown right at this moment.
Yeah, because as you say, people being trapped here, there's potential for people like various triathletes who might fancy having a go, who obviously cycle, swim, and run. But if those events aren't available for them, then why not get involved in some cycling? I know that Team Ineos have taken on a triathlete recently in for their team as something new. So yes, there's all sorts of people that you might find that you wouldn't normally see on the cycling scene here that could be here for those kind of events as well.
Yeah, correct. It would be great to see all those people come together, and once again, there's some real talent here in New Zealand right at this moment, and it would be nice if we could have some racing that could get those top European New Zealand riders that are stuck here in New Zealand racing with a few of our younger guys, and that I think with spectators as well, it would definitely promote and help the sport in a big way.
So tour of the Bay of South Islands 3 times because it's the warmest part of the country. The, so races up there. I don't know. So yeah, I'll be interested to see what happens over the next few days. One of the issues with cycling teams is that you don't have a venue, you can't sell tickets, you don't gain that much through, you don't sort of get paid to turn up to races. So funding is can be very precarious for teams. It's all on sponsorship. How sort of stable are, or what kind of outlook are you looking at for Black Spoke Pro Cycling? It sounds like you've got some private investors who are doing it for on a more philanthropic reason than exposure. So is that giving you some sort of years to be able to plan this?
Yeah, we've got at least a 3-year plan in place at the moment. But yeah, it's definitely difficult. I think any sponsorship within sport is hard. And just, yeah, as you said, not having a stadium where we can sell ticket sales or anything like that. And cycling, it's, if you go to Tour de France, there's millions of people on the side of the road, and throughout the 3-week race, and the exposure is massive worldwide. But actually capturing that and getting that money back to the pro teams has always been the hardest challenge, I think. The race events and the UCI have tied up a lot of the capital of any sort of money that's come through, and the sponsors themselves are only relying on the advertising that they can get by putting their teams out there on TV. But after that race is finished, there is very little income coming in. And that's something that's, I think, definitely in our sport needs to change. I don't know how that's going to happen, but to secure the future of the sport, it definitely needs to change. Otherwise, it just makes it too hard for the sponsors to survive long term.
And so if you're new to watching a cycle race, one of the reasons people might attack early is because it means they get exposure of their jersey on the camera for longer. So not all moves in the cycle race are necessarily to try and win a race. Sometimes it is purely for sponsor exposure as well, which is an interesting one.
Sometimes those moves pay off as well.
Sometimes
you never know.
I noticed here that one of the events that you've entered with Black Spoke, right, is gravel and tar. Was that a gravel race, or is that a road race that just happens to have some?
Yeah, it's kind of it's a very new race. It's a UCI race now, which is really good for New Zealand. The boys that race it all seem to love it. It's quite difficult. It's probably a 50-50 mix of gravel and tar the whole way through. So it's it's big in America. This is the biggest growing category over there, and that's gravel racing is becoming a thing. And within the bike industry, there's a lot of work to cater for that as well. So it's something that's definitely getting bigger. In Europe we have say Paris-Roubaix, which has always been the cobbles, and now it seems to be extending to gravel in other countries. So it's quite interesting to see it develop.
And you've got the I've gone blank. The Italian race that's done on the dust roads.
Bianchi.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is done on dust roads, but they're still considered road races now, and they still have all the same rules around kind of the team sizes and a lot of the tactics around you're all racing. You've already got a team racing for one person to try and win. For gravel racing, is it still team based? Is it kind of similar length races, or is it more like cyclocross, which is a shorter race and it's individuals racing against each other?
Cyclocross is definitely a different category. It's got its own little thing going on. Mountain biking, the same. It's gravel is more like races like Paris-Roubaix. I suppose even gravel and tar here, they are still road races, and they are very tactical with teams that turn up. I think gravel racing in America has become more of a slightly different event again, and that's the event, the category that it is growing is more endurance, more off-road, and it is quite tough racing. There are teams that are entering, but it's a lot more individual. And then some of these gravel races get up to 320 k's, so they're real endurance events with a massive following of spectators that can race as well at different levels and different distances. So that's where the sport is attracting a lot of people.
Okay, so Milan San Remo kind of length.
That's
up to 300. Yeah.
More survival as well, I suppose. A bit more individual and different terrain. Yeah, off-road, on-road.
So, but you're not looking that's not an area that you're looking at taking the team. It is still sticking to the traditional road racing.
Yeah, it is a road team, and it would be definitely a good thing if we could get the resources and go into a bit of gravel racing. I'm sure the boys would be very excited about it. So, as I said, that category is quite new, and it is coming. But yeah, definitely something to look towards in the future, I think.
It is. So, he's still a pro cyclist, but Ian Boswell, for example, has given up the road, and he's just doing gravel now. He had just too many crashes on the road, and he just thinks it's safer doing gravel racing. He's less likely to get concussions, etc., than road racing in a peloton, where you do get broken collarbones and pretty regular crashes. So he sees it as a safer for the athlete. Kind of thing.
Definitely. Road cycling is so competitive now, and those fields are very tight, and they are pretty fierce, and they are moving it very even faster now than they ever have before. The speeds are incredibly fast, so the skill factor inside road cycling is a real big aspect of the sport now. I suppose with gravel, it's definitely slower. Obviously, you're on loose metal, which can be seen as dangerous, but overall, it wouldn't be as dangerous as a big road race anyway.
Some of the discussions in Europe I've seen is around road furniture. For people who don't know what I mean by that, things like speed bumps, traffic islands, etc. How much have you seen those come in over your period of cycling, and how much of an issue is that for road racing now?
I think, it's definitely that's the career end of that one. If you do potentially hit one, they can be very dangerous. But it's part of the sport, and it is something you've got to really keep your eyes out for, and hopefully the event itself is well managed and well marshalled, and you'll see a lot of those marshals pointing out a lot of that furniture. But every now and then it does catch out riders, especially in races in Italy, that have a lot more furniture and are a lot more sporadic and a bit more chaotic. They are, you do see that quite a bit, where a rider will hit something on the road, or an island, or a bollard, or whatever's in the road, which is obviously not ideal.
The safety thing as well. As well as on a gravel track, you're not going to have things that just appear in the middle of the road. As you say, you have got more chance of slipping over.
I suppose the pelotons are a lot smaller in gravel and a lot more spread out. When you're in a peloton, you're in with 200 riders, you're effectively touching the wheel in front of you, and if that wheel moves left or right last minute and there's something there, then you don't always get the opportunity to see that bit of furniture or island coming at you at high speed, and that's when it does go wrong in a big way.
So also, there's a lot of trust in road cycling then, with the other people around you. Does that mean you will, are there certain wheels you'll look, or certain jerseys you look for and go, okay, I know those guys are relatively safe riders, so I'll try and ride near them? Or if you see a certain jersey in front of you, have you decided, I need to get out of here because I know he's not a safe person?
That's definitely the case. You always see someone who's not quite as safe as another rider, and I think as the ranks go into professional, as the better professional teams are there, then they have a lot more respect for their competition too, and they are pointing out things, and they are looking after each other in that bunch as well. A few of the, I suppose, smaller races where no one really knows everyone, that can be a little bit more chaotic. And
so there isn't some, I've seen riders, they'll either flick an elbow or they'll put a hand out, or is that universal sign language, or is it?
Definitely. You definitely want to be pointing stuff out, and that's but sometimes you're in a situation where you're in a high speed moment or sprinting, and everything's just coming at you so quick that you don't even get a chance to point stuff out. And that's when, that's part of the sport really. But as I say, look at the Tour de France. There seems to be a lot more management around those bollards or islands, and to the point where they even remove them if they are too dangerous. So they will make it as safe as they possibly can.
Yeah, but there's a difference between and this is one of the differences, that the Tour de France is a multi-million-pound event that's the biggest race in the world. They can afford to remove certain road furniture and put it back a couple of weeks later. The races you're talking about, sort of organising here in New Zealand, that budget's not there, is it? So you just have to, you're relying on volunteer marshals, maybe a farmer donating some bales of hay to put in the way of certain pieces, especially if you've got a descent, for example, and that kind of thing. So it's different at different levels, I guess. Cool. Anything I've or any riders that we should be looking out for from Black Spoke? Who are if you do get to race here in New Zealand, who should we be looking out for, and what different types of riders have you got in the squad?
You've got a bit of a mixed bag really. We've got the likes of one of our older guys, Aaron Guyton. Obviously, most Kiwis know him. He's a track rider. He's very good on the road as well. So he's got a lot of experience. He's probably one rider that he should have been through teams folding or injury or mechanicals. He's still got a lot to offer, that guy, and I think he's definitely a rider to watch out for. No one wants to take Aaron to the finish of a race because he's very dangerous, and the chances of him still being there is very high. And James Orham's also been around a long time, as well as Hayden McCormick. So there's some really good strength in the team. As far as our young guys go, that's probably a little early still to tell. We've taken a punt on probably 4 young guys who have shown something within a local New Zealand national level, but all we can do is hope that they can progress from where they are now, and we see a lot of potential in those guys. And
so, do you have a designated sprinter, or is that you're not got that kind of that organisation level that we've seen in top teams?
Yeah, we haven't got so-called pure sprinter. Aaron's probably our fastest man in the team, and he's still very, very quick. To take out a number of wins is always hard in bunch kicks, but we will be looking for a faster sprinter for next season as well. We do have a very well-rounded team, and it's probably the one man we're missing is that pure sprinter who doesn't really get over the hills as well as the likes of Aaron. But we're definitely looking for that in the future.
And do you have is there an out-and-out climber, or is that not something that's again, it's more rolling races rather than steep climb races here in New Zealand, so we don't produce those so much?
Yeah, no, we're sort of, James Orham is close, probably one of our closest guys to the older climbers. Young fella Ari Scott from Nelson, he's won a big race in Spain last season. That's why we took him on the team. It was a hilltop finish, and he rode away from some really good Spanish climbers, So, and he's shown some great potential. He rode really well in the Sunter. He was mixing it with some top riders on the hilltop finishes, and he's sort of getting up there, which is good to see at the age of 18. He's got a big future.
Cool. Actually, the other thing I haven't asked you about is this will be your first season as a race director in the car. How have you adapted to that? Sort of giving or sort of trying to manage the team from a car.
I did get a little bit of experience. I did with the team Wish Me Luck back in the past. I ended up managing the last I retired, and then I gave him a hand with directing a few races like Langkawi and things. So I had a little bit of experience back then. And then since then I've entered teams and local races and managed to look after them. But it's back behind the steering wheel is definitely it's a bit of a wake up, and I've got some great staff behind me. I've got mechanics that have been in the peloton for the last sort of 10 years who generally yells at me from the back seat if I'm doing something wrong or missing one of the race rules or something. So it's always good to have that sort of support behind me. But it's come back to me pretty quick, and I suppose the main thing is just being able to read races and try and give the riders as much insight and much knowledge as possible without getting it wrong through the earpieces into the peloton, which is not always an easy job.
So to give people an idea that so you're having to drive a car. You're obviously behind the race, so you can't really actually see what's going on. So do they have like race radio, like they do in like Tour de France in the local races, describing what's going on?
Some of the local races we do. It depends on the category if you're allowed to use earpieces to the riders. So the bigger races we are allowed to, and we get reports from the race commissaire, who then comes into the car through a separate radio. Then we use another radio to talk to the riders, and that's the mechanic's job is also to change a wheel or fix a bike, but he's also in the back of the car writing down numbers and collecting all that information for you and passes it back to you when you need it as well. So
obviously riders will be identified by number over the radio rather than by name probably.
Correct.
So you're having to remember who got given what number that day, or who you allocated what number within your own team. Never mind who's in the other teams. You're trying to drive a car and avoid all the other cars in the train behind as well, and make up decisions as to guys, come on, we pre-race, we said this is when we're going to attack. Are you all in position? Are you ready? Do you also have someone with the road book going, okay guys, we're coming up to a roundabout now, or those sort of
we feed them as much info as we possibly can. As I say, it's not always as easy. You can imagine the riders are at one spot on the road, there's a break at 3 minutes in front of that, and then your car is probably still 40 seconds behind the bunch itself. So you're always allowing time for everything to give the correct information, and sometimes that information that's coming through is also delayed. So it's very easy to actually give the riders incorrect information as well as correct information. So you got to be a little bit careful on what you say sometimes. Yeah.
But there's a lot. There's quite a lot going on in the car, and it's a bit like trying to fly an aeroplane remotely in some ways.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun at the same time, and it has a lot of downtime, but it has obviously some very intense moments, and crashes or punches or it all seems to happen at once. That's for sure.
So when you say downtime, is you talking about the early stages of the race when basically there's not much going on? It's about sort of conserving energy. Is that what you're talking about, downtime? Or are you talking about downtime between races?
More, during, so the stages could be 200 kilometers, and there could be a break at 3 minutes with a team on the front and 5 riders up the road just lapping out. So those moments, you can be sitting there with not a lot to do for 2-3 hour period. So there's definitely some downtime within the job, but it's just and then clearly with the riders themselves, they go into downtime, they train really hard, but to recover they need a lot of downtime as well, and same with racing. After the race they need to be resting really, really, really hard to get ready for the following day.
So when you go take the team to Europe, well, I guess you haven't done yet, but when you do, you'll be basically in each other's back pockets or together for 3-4 months, where you kind of see each other pretty much most days. Any kind of sort of plans on or card games or other kind of competitions you'll be running to keep people entertained and to just during those times when they're having to just sit and rest and recuperate?
Yeah, I think they'll pretty much do whatever they can to entertain themselves as bike riders. Obviously with the internet these days, and just having colleagues and being in foreign countries, they've got it's definitely a nice part of their job is the downtime. They get to see a lot as well, and get to, I suppose, kick back a lot more than the average person when they are resting. That's for sure.
And I guess that's just something else that just occurred to me. Obviously, we've taken them over to Europe. So, have you encouraged any of them to learn a foreign language, and what is the kind of language of the peloton, or do you have your own team languages and it's just lots of different languages going on, and there isn't a set peloton language? Yeah,
like a team like ours is quite easy. Kiwi team, obviously English, and the international cycling language is English. But once you're in Europe, the respectful thing to do is just use as much of the local language as possible. And a few of the riders capable of speaking more than one language. And I think if you join a different team in a different part of the world, then you should make as much of an effort to learn that language as possible.
So
maybe this downtime might help with that as well. They could actually pick up and study a little bit more as well on languages if they were good.
Did you learn Flemish or French?
I ended up learning a little bit of Flemish, but yeah, in Belgium, the language, because it's a country that's right in the middle of Germany, Luxembourg, Holland, France, and Germany, they have adopted English as as a language that is universal, and most people there speak it. So it's probably one of the harder countries to pick up the local lingo.
Cool. Well, thank you very much for your time. I'm looking, so everyone check out some Black Spoke Pro Cycling Academy and look out for what races they might be doing this season. What's the best place for people to find out when and where you'll be racing?
Either the website or just on Instagram as well. Black Spoke Pro Cycling on Instagram is probably the easiest way to follow the team.
So there you go, folks. Thank you very much for your time, and folks, don't forget to like the Facebook page, or if you prefer to listen on the go, then subscribe to our podcast, New Zealand Sports Radio. We're on iTunes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, all those wonderful places. Scott, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.